Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome Kelly McGuire to our channel today. Kelly has been a professional counselor for over 20 years and has 14 years experience as a hypnotherapist. So Kelly, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today about hypnotherapy and its benefits for children with special needs.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So let's get right into it then. So maybe we could start with a simple question. So what is hypnotherapy?
Okay, yeah, great question and relatively simple answer. So hypnotherapy uses the tool of hypnosis to help make changes in our life. So then that makes us ask the question, what is hypnosis? And even though movies make us think that it is, this mystical, magical thing out there in Hollywood, it's actually something really simple. Hypnosis is actually a natural state of the mind that we all go in and out of every single day. It's somewhere between being awake and being asleep. It's that state of the mind that you go into when you maybe space out for a few minutes and don't remember anything, but you didn't fall over and you didn't fall asleep. That was a very light state of hypnotic trance. So hypnosis, the state of hypnosis, is a really normal, natural state of our minds that we go in and out of. And hypnotherapy then allows us to tap into this state so we can actually make really great changes in our life in an effective, natural, simple way.
That's amazing. And so how can hypnotherapy help children with special needs?
Right. So one of the great things about hypnotherapy is that it is accessible to all of us. And it's a different way that our mind can learn, experience, and take in things from our environment and around the world. So when we go into the hypnotic state, we can experience things that we maybe wouldn't have otherwise experienced and learn things that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise learned. Like when we're watching a movie and we get so involved in the movie that we actually feel like we are, driving in that car with Tom Cruise or climbing the mountain with whoever it is in the movie, we can actually partly know that we're imagining and we're pretending as we're watching the movie. But part of our brain actually experiences it when we're in that state. So hypnotherapy can allow us to go into that state and experience something that our mind actually then believes to be true, which can actually change things in our brain. It creates new neural pathways in our brain. It's a new way of learning without ever having to leave the couch, the moment, the room. So the way that it can help kids with special needs is it gives us a way to get into the mind, to allow an experience to occur, to allow learning to happen, to create new neural pathways in perhaps maybe a non-traditional way, but a way that can be maybe a fun experience or a peaceful experience and give us really great tools and ways to make these changes. So kids with special needs, for example, kids who maybe are on the autism spectrum, and I know that that's quite a broad range on the spectrum, so there are many different ways and levels kids experience being on the spectrum. For example, if there's a child with ADHD, perhaps regular learning isn't, the old traditional school book learning isn't maybe the way that their brain is best going to learn something. Or just telling that child, hey, if you sit down quietly, you will have a better experience. That maybe isn't going to work for that child. But if we can use hypnotherapy instead to allow that child to dive into an experience, go to an altered state, which, by the way, kids actually go into the hypnotic state much more easily than adults. They go in and out of it all the time anyway. That's actually part of their natural state. So they can go into this wonderful natural state, have an experience, and through this experience, their brain and their mind and their self can learn perhaps new information, or perhaps a new way of managing emotions, or perhaps a new way of learning how to focus. I know, I have worked with lots of kids who have ADHD and who were brought to me from their parents who said, look, my kid just cannot focus in the classroom. Can you help us? And this is actually one of the great things that hypnosis can do for kids who have trouble focusing, because we can go into the mind through a wonderful imaginative experience and teach the brain how to learn how to focus. And then by the end of the session, their brain now has a new neural pathway system that has learned to focus in a completely new way. So the child can have this life-altering experience and go into the classroom the next day, the next week, pay attention to what's being said, be able to focus for longer periods of time, and yet the learning was simple and gentle, fun, and easy and natural. So that's just one example of a way that hypnotherapy can help children with special needs. And of course, as you can imagine, if we take that idea and that example and build on it, there are hundreds of ways that we can help kids in all different areas of need. Emotional stability is another one. You know, very often kids with special needs can feel lots of really big emotions and maybe don't have the tools yet to be able to handle them, to be able to work with them or understand them or be able to manage them. So by using hypnotherapy, we can go in through this really creative, gentle, natural way into the mind and offer the tools of being able to handle these big emotions, being able to experience, for example, frustration without having the next act automatically be acting out with that frustration. We can put something else in place, we can give them alternate options, but we're plugging them in at the subconscious level, at that deep internal level that allows them to automatically react in this new way without having to go through the more traditional learning tools that maybe haven't been working for them in the past.
I think you mentioned to me once, we talked about anxiety and helping children with their anxiety. Sometimes they might have experiences in the classroom that create some kind of trauma. And how could you help that?
Yes, in fact, anxiety is probably one of the things that I see the most in my practice, both in children and in adults right now. And having experiences in the classroom, both having anxiety itself in the classroom, as well as having experiences in the classroom that then lend themselves to either create the seeds of anxiety or to just grow the anxiety that's already there. So one of the things that I'm really a big fan of doing with my clients who experience anxiety is to be able to go into the subconscious mind, which is where we go when we're in that trance-like state, and use the power of imagination, use the power of experience to create a new way to experience life. So for example, I can guide my clients into a hypnotic state and imagine that they are in a beautiful big bubble. And inside this bubble, there's only peace and safety, kindness, gentleness, and that is what they experience when they're in this bubble. And then I can have them imagine that they're going into a situation that maybe once upon a time, for example, the classroom, would have brought about anxiety. And so we can imagine this child going into the classroom, but in their bubble. The bubble keeps them feeling protected, allows them to hang on to the feelings of peacefulness and safety, and they can yet see the things in their classroom, hear the things they usually hear, but feel something in a different way. Because this gets plugged into their subconscious mind, it allows for a connection between feeling peace and calm in what would have otherwise been maybe a very triggering or stressful environment. This means that the next time they go into this environment, they already have now an experience of having been calm, feeling safe, feeling peaceful in what used to be a triggering situation. So now that they've had the experience, even though it was subconsciously and through hypnosis, the mind still recognizes it as an experience. Now that they've had the experience of safety, they can then recreate that or re-experience it in the environment that maybe before would have triggered anxiety. So we can actually see a very big difference in, as I say, both kids as well as adults experience a tremendous shift in their experience of anxiety using this kind of hypnotherapy.
That's great. So essentially you're saying that even if we were speaking about some kind of traumatic experience, because a lot of children with special needs sometimes experience, things early in life that might cause some kind of trauma that stays in the subconscious. So you could even help them with that, right?
Absolutely. In fact, there are two ways that I really like to use hypnosis and hypnotherapy to attend to what is going on for these kids. So on one hand, we want to release any connection that was created in the mind from a previous trauma. So releasing is a really beautiful, empowering and healing thing that can happen in any kind of therapy, and it's a way for us to get into that subconscious place where they hold the memory, the trauma, the experience, and allow them to cut the ties with it. Maybe not the memory itself, of course. We don't forget necessarily the situation or the trauma or the experience, but we can cut the tie with the traumatic experience, the carrying that trauma with us in the present moment. So we can use hypnotherapy to go to that feeling, have them release that feeling so it no longer has a hold on them. And then we take hypnotherapy into the path of the present and the future versus releasing the past to create then the new experience. And that's where things like that bubble come into place, the new experiences come into place, and we create what will be ideally now the new reaction, the new behavior, the new experience, instead of that old wound that's now been released from the pain.
That's really great. And I imagine this kind of therapy also helps the whole family. So the siblings, the parents, parents of children with special needs. And how do you think that could work in?
It absolutely does. In fact, as you know, and I'm sure many of your viewers know by now, that this does and can impact the entire family. Everyone gets impacted at a different level. A family unit is sort of a living entity all in itself, and so if one part of the family gets affected, everything and everyone inside of it also gets affected. So if we look at parents, for example, parents are experiencing potentially things like, added stress, disturbances in sleep, increased anxiety, feelings of guilt, feelings of grief. And so parents can be feeling all kinds of things based on what's going on inside of the family, and yet usually we're really focusing on attending to either the child or the situation at hand. But if we look at what parents are going through, it can be really important to make sure that the parents are feeling that they are being tended to, so that they can remain strong and be present in their family and for their kids. So, a great example is years ago, I had a client who had a traumatic experience at birth, and because of the traumatic experience through the birth of the child, this parent ended up having increased anxiety, and not only would get up, every maybe half an hour to check on the newborn baby, kept doing this for the next 7 years. And so no matter what was happening with the child and all of the things that they were doing to attend to the child, they were also running on no sleep for 7 years. And it became an automatic response for this parent. And so we did a few hypnosis sessions to rewrite the sleep pattern within their mind. And for the first time in 7 years, this parent was able to get some sleep and therefore able to feel more healthy in the day, more able to be present for themselves, more able to be present for their family. And so that's just, one example of a way that tending to the parent can really tend to the whole family as well. And again, like I said, there's grief as well, there's added stress, there's anxiety, there's all kinds of other emotions that parents are going through that need to be healed, need to be tended to. And that's just as important, especially when you look at the family unit as a whole entity. Everyone inside the family needs the healing. And then if we look at siblings, for example, as well, I know you and I have spoken about this. siblings as well often are experiencing things that maybe aren't being attended to or even talked about. But if we talk to the siblings in the family, we might see that siblings are feeling potentially lonely or misunderstood. Perhaps they're having self-esteem issues, not feeling as important or as seen. And so their sense of self and self-esteem may be in trouble or going down. And so to tend to the siblings in these families is so important, so that we can use this hypnotherapy to support a sibling, for example, who isn't feeling worthy enough. Perhaps doesn't, lash out, and perhaps stays very quiet. So it may not be evident, but just has a very tiny, quiet issue with their feelings of feeling worthy. So we can use hypnotherapy to go in and remind this child, or let this child know of their worthiness, and really build that part of their sense of self, so they can become a strong, whole human unto themselves, and then a strong, whole, healed part of the family.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly. That was really interesting. I really like how we talked about the whole family, because it is really important to address, the parents and the children with special needs, but also the brothers and sisters. So I felt it was important to have this chat with you, because this is really a form of therapy that can really help everyone. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all this information, and I will be sure to share underneath this video some additional, your website and your contact info, so that people can get in touch with you if they have any questions.
That would be great, and it was my pleasure. I agree that tending to everyone in the family is so important. And the beautiful thing about hypnotherapy is it is a natural form of therapy, and it can and does tend to everyone in so many different ways. So it's one of those tools that we can use to tend to all different kinds of needs that need to be healed. So it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And absolutely, you can put my contact information there. And if any of your viewers have any questions that they ever want to ask me, they can, email me or reach out to my contact info. And I'd be happy to speak to anyone who has questions or concerns.
Perfect. Thank you so much.